I just got to start by saying I don't know if I feel comfortable calling you Jim. Like I feel like when I call you Mr. Murray. But
Please do.
I know. So here are some core memories for me.
Okay.
As a young musician,
Uh-huh.
or as a young singer. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and saw the morning paper.
Oh, yeah.
Hope is lost at sea. I can't tell you how many
Rather
times
believe.
those songs come up in my soul, just out of nowhere. Or he didn't bring us this far to leave us. Didn't teach us to swim to let us drown. It just pops out all
lyrics.
the time. That's the power of a great voice with a great song sung with conviction, and is deposited in someone's life at the right time. And so I just want to start by saying what an honor and a thrill it is for me to sit down with one of my heroes today, Jim Murray. Welcome to the One Degree Vanity podcast. You're one of the first voices I ever heard picking up a Christian album in 1980 for the first time. I picked up One More Song for You.
Oh, yeah.
And just because it looked cool, and I didn't, my mom took me to a Christian record store when I had some money to spend, and there it was sitting there, and I took it home and listened to it on headphones, blown away, and then went right back as soon as I had more money and bought Priority. And and then of course I had to go to Heed the Call and Sail On, and there was a live album you did at First Baptist Waco.
In Waco?
And
yes.
Somebody sent me that. I had lost it.
Oh, really?
And somebody actually sent me that in the mail and said, I thought you talk a lot about the Imperials on your podcast, so I thought you might like this. And I'm like, oh, there it is. I thought I would never find this again. So you have such a history in gospel music and Christian music that is, I think, beyond anybody else that could tell this story. And so I don't know where all this is going to go. I would love to get as much as possible as you want to. But I just kind of want to start by saying thank you.
Well,
thank you for
you're very welcome.
using the gift God gave you in the way that he gave it to you. And I know there's a lot to your story, but at the core of it is, because this is One Degree of Andy, you made an impact on a young musician as a teenager that motivated me to have a career in Christian music and go, you know what? If I could sing like that, I think I can make it. And I patterned a lot of what I did after you back in those days.
Oh, that's great. Where did you grow up?
Grew up in Waco, Texas.
Oh, great. Waco, Texas.
Yeah, I didn't even know Word Records
places.
was there.
Yeah.
I was just had I known back then that, all these artists were coming into Waco to sit down in meetings, I would have taken notice. But
Gerald McCracken.
Uh-huh.
Trying to remember the name of the golf course we used to play at. We'd play every time. Buddy Huey and Gerald Roland Lundy. I mean, those guys are. Yeah. We originally started with the Benson Company. Yeah. Here in Nashville. And Heartwarming over in Nashville, and then eventually moved to Word Records. But so you're from Texas.
Yeah.
That's the first place I lived after I got married in 1964.
Oh wow.
But I had been, like most of the Southern gospel people are from the South.
Right.
And I'm from Michigan. But I was introduced to gospel music probably in 62, 63. Yeah. I was just out of high school. And I heard the Blackwood Brothers and the Statesmen. And it just like this music, I never had heard it before.
What kind of singing were you doing before that? I mean, obviously.
Sacred music. Yeah. I sang in the Madrigal Choir in high school.
Okay.
It was like the specialty choir.
Yeah.
It would be like Truth.
Yeah.
This was a special group. And you just didn't walk in and get into it. But I had been in junior high school and had gone through junior high in choir. My choir teacher introduced me to Dr. McIntyre, who was the leader of the Madrigal Choir. And my mom and dad had both sung under Dr. McIntyre in the same choir. Wow. So now here I am. I come along and I got in my first year and sang. But I was in the bass part of the choir.
Yeah.
Singing the
really?
basses. Yeah.
Wow, that's
isn't
surprising.
That weird? Yeah. And then I guess then my voice changed and I started singing in the tenor section.
Yeah.
And I sang with a little group we called the Sherwoods. We were like the Letterman of that time.
Yeah.
And then I went to some guys. I went to Bible study, went to Bible class or a Bible study rather, and after school. and met 3 other guys that sang. They were from the South, and they sang gospel music. Asked me to sing with them. We became the Melodiers, and we started singing all over Michigan.
And how old were you at
quartet.
that point?
Probably 17.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we went through the whole. We sang. Actually, we were with involved with Youth for Christ, which at that time was very influential in the schools and everything. So we traveled all around Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, and we were the Melodiers. All the group had airs in their name. The Temple Airs, the Jubilaires. We were the Melodiers.
Yeah, that's funny.
And that's what we did.
Yeah.
And I went to Detroit, and I sang on the Northern States Quartet Convention, and all the big groups were there. It was a talent search, and we won that, and in our quartet won that. And then we got introduced to the Blackwoods and the Statesmen and all these groups.
And you were on their radar kind of
At that point.
that? Yeah.
And I met Jake, met Big Chief and Hovey, and I met all those guys that I'd seen them on the albums and had heard them. I thought, wow, this is incredible music. And I loved the harmonies, because of course I'd been in church all my life, and here they're singing Christian songs.
Yeah.
And so I met these guys, and from there, I started singing. The Melodiers traveled a little bit more. I ended up moving to Detroit and singing with a group called the Orell Quartet. And Lloyd Orell was actually a promoter of gospel singings. And he would bring in the Blackwoods and the Statesmen and the Rebels and the Spear Family and the Lefevres and all these groups, and they would call it the all-night singing.
Oh, yeah.
And so we were part of that, the Orell, because Mr. Orell, his son was Larry, and Larry sang and started the group. So we got to sing on all these programs.
Yeah.
Got to meet these people, hang with them, and it was pretty cool.
Wow.
That was my introduction into gospel music, and that happened in just a real quick, seemed like a year or two. And I got married in '64. And we moved to Dallas, Texas. I went to work for the Stamps Quartet Music Company. It was in Oak Cliff, Jefferson Street over in Oak Cliff.
I know exactly
So
where
during
that
the
is.
week, we made songbooks, and during the weekends, we sang with the Stamps Trio and all over Texas in these little convention singings.
So you were off and running. I mean, this was going to be. Had you already decided this was going to be my life? You were going to, or you were just doing the next thing?
I was doing the next thing.
Yeah.
I had studied voice at Michigan State University. I was a off-campus student, but my teacher was Dr. Gene Greenwell, who had been with the Metropolitan Opera, very well-known and very incredible guy. And he talked, when you walked in, he was a basso profundo, and I'm just little, Jim. And so we worked together for several years, and at one point, I was singing with this quartet, and and I'm saying, I want to sing up in this range, and he said, Jim, I don't think I can do anything more to help you. So basically, he fired me. And
well, wait a minute, I want to push on this for a second because it's fascinating to me because, you're going to be the voice that God gave you.
Right.
Did you choose at some point to go, I want to be that high tenor? I mean, if
did.
you were singing, if you had that range to go low and sing baritone, and
I could sing, but I couldn't do the parts, the bass part.
Okay.
But I could sing baritone.
Yeah.
And harmony was there from, I guess, when I was born. I heard harmonies.
Yeah.
And that's
and
part
I have a
of
theory.
it.
I don't know. I have a lot of vocal students that I work with, and they want instruction on how to sing harmony. I'm like,
Harmony.
I can teach you how to find, like ear training, how to find things, but some of it's intrinsic, I believe.
I believe you're right. And I believe you're influenced by everything you hear.
Yes.
The music, my dad was a big band fan, and he loved, he was the Sinatra, and he was Stan Kenton, and he was into that, Dave Brubeck, the whole deal. So that's all I heard. I loved classical music. And I loved opera. So I was kind of what would they call that?
Confused?
Confused, yeah. A conference, a conflagrance.
Yeah.
Anyway, I had all of this going on in my head.
Yeah.
But the voice was telling me where to go.
Right.
and it put me in the higher range.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started singing with a quartet, I'm mimicking in a lot of what I'm hearing from quartets.
Yeah.
I'm doing that same thing vocally.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody said, here, you do this or you do that. I just had found it from my teaching with my coaching from the vocal coach.
That's why the Imperials, I think, were so important to me, because listening to pop radio growing up, I was just naturally drawn to the BGVs.
Oh, yeah,
and all the
sure.
different parts surrounding.
Yeah.
I kind of thought singing lead was kind of boring, honestly.
Yeah.
That it's like, well, anybody can do that. They can just follow the main line going
Right.
through. What's interesting to me is hearing what the guitar's doing, what the keys
Exactly.
are doing, the voice sings, and then how the different voices are putting themselves around,
Yeah.
and then once I started learning theory and taking classical piano, I'm like, okay, it starts to
Makes
unlock
more
how all this
sense.
works. But again, and even growing up in a family maybe that sings that, or like you're saying, growing up around gospel music and Southern gospel, and how that works, you're drawn to it.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah, especially what we ended up doing, of course, and you do it when you're my age back then. You copy.
Yeah. Right.
You don't mean to, but you do.
Oh, we're all mimics. That's
So
the only way
you hear the guy that really
Yeah.
would stick out to me, Bill Shaw and Rosie Roselle. They were the two singers.
Yeah.
One with the Statesmen, one with the Blackwood Brothers. And because we got to be on stage with them, I would wait until the Blackwood Brothers would start to sing the Old Country Church.
Oh, wow.
I'm redeemed by love. And that was Bill Shaw's part. And he'd start that. Well, I'd be standing on the side of the stage. And it would be a kind of, everybody would kind of filter out to the stage. And we would all be singing with these guys. And it's what people enjoyed that. They loved to see it. And so I got to sing with Bill Shaw and with Rosie. I'm redeemed by love divine, oh glory, glory. And so I started, that was my beginnings.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I kind of adapted that sound and in those places where the tenor's on top and everything is underneath it.
Yeah.
And that's just how I started, and I learned it that way.
Yeah.
But it'd be hard to show somebody. They have to hear it.
Yeah,
And say, okay, I can do that with this gift, this voice. And then you're starting to believe and understand what this does and how you do it so that you can repeat it.
Yeah.
Because when you're on the road,
That's
you have to do it every night. The show must go on.
That's right.
And especially if you're singing the lead or the tenor and that you're featured,
Yeah.
you've got to do it.
Yeah.
So one thing that my voice teacher said that I'll never forget, he said, you're the only one that will take care of your voice. Nobody else will. So I learned from an early time, smoking and drinking ain't going to get it, because that's going to mess you up.
Yeah.
Before I really knew the Lord, I just knew that wasn't something that I wanted to be a part of because I was protecting this gift.
Well, you always sounded good. Like you always sounded, there was that clean, very pure tone that you always had. And I felt like I had it too. That's why I was always drawn and wanted to mimic what you were doing because I was like, okay, I can do that. There's that clean tone that works around all the, that works around a Russ Taff or works around, Dave Will. That's a little more crusty and
and a little more edgy and
so a little edgier. And so that was okay. So I want to know. I got to go to Elvis.
Okay.
Right. So how did you get around Elvis?
Actually, when we were going to the National Quartet Convention in Memphis, where all the quartets were, and they weren't all just quartets. It was like family groups and everything, trios, and the O'Rell Quartet. We were invited to sing as part of that. What we were told after we got there is, tomorrow night, Elvis is going to be here. And it's like, oh, is he going to sing? No, he'll be backstage. So we're like, because I had known about Elvis. I wasn't a big Elvis fan, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But when I look back now, I think, man, the guy could really sing. I mean, he had a great voice.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd be wondering, wonder when he's going to come in. Where's he going to be at? And he would always come in the back door, and James or Hovey would always be there to let him in. And he would walk in, come over and take a seat, and just like anybody else. And he loved it. He would sit there the whole night and listen.
Yeah.
And once or twice they did introduce him, and he went out on the stage, and of course the people went crazy.
Yeah.
And he'd go back and sit down. So that was my first introduction to Elvis personally, actually, to meet him and to say hello and talk to him. But he loved gospel music.
Yeah, you can tell with what he did.
Everything he did
that was just infused in everything that he did.
Exactly. And I love that, infused.
Yeah.
It's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then how did the Imperials start? Like, how did that happen?
From the time that I was singing with the Orel Quartet, I had met Jake, of course, with the Statesman. When Jake left the group, we all heard, he's going to form a new group. And he had put together the Imperials with Henry Slaughter. Now, I didn't know Henry as well, but I knew who he was. Mm-hmm. And Armand, I had met Armand with the Weatherfords. And then Gary McSpadden with the Oak Ridge, I had met him and knew him. And Jake with the...
I forgot that Gary was
the original.
Part of that. Mm-hmm. Wow.
And then Cheryl Nielsen had been with the Spear family.
Yeah.
So that was the original Imperials. And all I knew about them is, man, these guys sound incredible.
Yeah,
and they
like
work hard.
Huh?
Oh, it was a super group. So that was.
So what year was that? What year was that?
64, 65.
Okay.
And I had just moved to Texas.
Right.
My wife and I had gone to work for JD, and so we were kind of out of the mainstream of the industry at that point. But and then when I left there and went back to Michigan. My first son was going to be born. So we went back there so she could be with her mom, and we moved back to Michigan. From there, I got the phone call from Jake when Cheryl decided to leave. Okay, here's this opening, and I don't think anything about me ever being...
We need someone with a female-type voice.
Right, yeah. Well...
I was always accused. People would say in those early podium records, like, how'd they get Amy Grant on their record? I'm like, that was me.
No, it's you.
It was me. I mean, thanks, but...
Anyway. Right. I understand it. I know.
The cross we bear.
That's right. Oh, yes. Gladly, the cross I bear. Yeah. And then from there, Jake said, I want you to come to Nashville. Cheryl's leaving. And so I moved down there, and my wife stayed in, and she had the baby and everything, but I moved down there, found a house, and we drove halfway across town over to Brentwood. And Jake lived in Brentwood. And so I started attending the rehearsals, and they hired me, and from there, we move on. It just kind of evolved from there.
Yeah. So was it originally a 5-man group?
Yes. And then when Henry left, Joe Muscale came aboard.
Okay.
And but before Henry left, I think Jake was seeing the advancing of the musical part of it, and he wanted a little more. We had done some work in the studios, and I think all of us enjoyed doing that.
Yeah.
And Jake saw maybe that was a way to go. And so he brought Larry Benson on board. Larry played the drums. He called him the one-armed drummer because he played the drums with one arm in the foot, the bass with his foot, and he was playing the bass keyboard.
No
I don't know how he did
I've
it.
I've never seen that before.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
If you see To Sing Is the Thing, you'll see him up there. And then we did get a bass player and a lead guitar and a drummer after Larry left. But, I mean, Larry was the first guy, along with a keyboard player, that we had. And then the band grew to become Solid Rock and Kennard. And that was the music was growing in that direction. And then in 1966, Felton Jarvis, who was at RCA Studios, put our name into Elvis when he was getting ready to go back and put a group together. And the Jordanaires were very busy. They were the number one group in Nashville, and they were so busy they really couldn't leave. They couldn't turn down all the session work.
Yeah.
And so they asked us to come aboard. And because we'd already met Elvis, it was kind of nice. It was like a little reunion. And
Wow, that's crazy.
It's the way you look back and see how history is being made,
Yeah.
and you're right in the middle of it, and you don't
You don't
know
know
it.
it, yeah.
You don't even know
Yeah,
it.
like we just said earlier, you're just doing the next thing.
Just doing the next thing.
And
That's
you meet
what's
these people along the way, and they're, once you meet them for a little bit, they become friends. They don't,
Yeah.
you don't look at them as icons. Later you just like, those are the guys we did life with, and
That's right.
And so, how long did you tour with Elvis?
Okay, we joined in '68. He opened in '69, so we were actually there late '68, '69, and we left in '71, I believe it was.
So, how many shows would that have been?
Oh
you think?
wow! Well, we were doing 2 shows a night for 4 weeks straight in Vegas with no nights off.
Oh wow!
And that was grueling.
Wow!
And then we did a couple road tours with him.
Yeah.
And
did you see the new Elvis movie?
I did.
What'd you think about it?
I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that.
I felt like Austin Butler should have won that.
I think
won the
he
Oscar.
did a great job.
That's one of the hardest working roles I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's toughy.
Yeah.
I thought he did great. There's some things that didn't happen quite that way, but now they're going to make something else. I believe they're going to take some. I was told they were going to take the outtakes of "That's the Way It Is," which is the movie we did with Elvis. They're going to redo a bunch of that, and who knows what they're going to do.
Wow.
So
it just feel weird. I mean, is it kind of weird to see that era of your life captured in story form and
it is. Yeah. Because like you said earlier, you're in history and you don't even know it.
Yeah.
You see yourself standing there and Elvis is trying to get ready to go on, and my wife, my late wife died. We'd been married 50 years, and she died in 14. And I had met this lady that I'm now married to for 5 years, Brenda. We met back in the 60s when I was telling you about being in Detroit and everything.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You've known each other that long.
Yeah.
Wow.
And she had been married to Cheryl Nielsen, who was the first original tenor.
Okay. Wait, when you said Cheryl.
Cheryl. Or
like Sherrill.
Cheryl.
I thought it was Cheryyl.
Oh, Cheryl.
And I'm like, oh, you had a female in the. I'm
no,
like, that's really odd.
It's Cheryl.
Okay, my bad.
No, it's Cheryl.
That all makes sense to me now. What we talked about.
What's interesting is later on, Armin's sister sang with him.
That's right.
And so they did have a girl at one time.
That's
but no, all the rest of the time it was just boys.
Just dudes. The boys club.
Hairy-legged boys.
I know about that. Oh, yeah.
But I had met her back then. And of course, 5 years ago, she came back from Pennsylvania to Tennessee. And she had been with her brother who had passed away. And she was, and Cheryl had passed away. And her and I hooked up again when she came here, and we decided we'd spend the rest of our life together.
Good for you. It's good to have you here. Yeah.
And she's got a great voice.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Right. She knew Elvis very well. Elvis, Cheryl, they were in studios and called her at 3:00 in the morning. Cheryl called and said, "Honey, come on down here. You've got to measure Elvis. He wants one of these shirts made like I got on." So he has a shirt that she had made with the collar, like big collar.
No way.
Yeah. So in the middle of the night, she's down there and she's
history
measuring Elvis, to make sure it's the right length, and she makes shirts for him.
Incredible.
I don't know how many times, honey, but quite a few, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever keep any of those? Do you have any, like anything that he wore or any memorabilia from that area?
I have what he gave my late daughter, was a Mickey Mouse ring.
Oh, no way. A Mickey Mouse ring for your daughter.
To measure him. Basically, I had met him earlier and had stayed in touch with him. And so he didn't know that I had little Cherie. And he took Cherie and went over to the piano and was doing lullabies and had this Mickey Mouse ring that was dangling.
Yeah.
So he takes it off and gives it to Cherie. And of course, a baby is going to take the ring and put it into their mouth. So I'm the protective mommy that's
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, it blows my mind. Wow.
It is amazing to be right in the middle of all of that.
Yeah.
And then in the Imperials in '71, it was getting to the point where Colonel Parker Tom Diskin was his right-hand guy, would call and say, "Hey, Elvis wants to go on the road, da-da-da-da, want you guys to be in so-and-so." I said, like, golly, we've got dates booked. we've got all these dates booked.
Yeah.
We really couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And so it got to be that kind of a thing where, they would just out of the blue want to go somewhere. And so there was no animosity between us and Elvis at all. And when we explained to him,
well, it's kind of the same thing that happened with the Jordanaires, right?
Yeah,
It's
the
just
same
like,
thing.
yeah.
Man, he loved the Jordanaires.
Yeah.
That was his first choice. But it's nice to be the second choice, you know. And so, but we had to move on, and that's when the Stamps and they came aboard and did a great job, you know. So, but, the time that we were there, it was, he worked us to death. And, man, he literally wore a hole in the carpet at the International Hotel the 2 weeks that we rehearsed every day, 8 hours a day. I mean, he was a workhorse, and he just looked like a horse. I mean, he was in such great shape, looked great, I mean, and sang. I mean, when he wasn't rehearsing, he was singing around the piano. Come here, guys,
Yeah.
And then after the shows, at like 2 a.m, he for a while he thought we were upset at him, and he came into the dressing room one night and he said, "Hey guys, I got to ask you, what did I do something to make you mad?" So, what do you mean?
Wow.
And he said, "Well, you guys never come up to the suite afterwards, Oh, we didn't know we should." He said, "Oh yeah, every night, and we sing. We got food up there.
That's wild.
We have a chef that comes in, and it was."
You're like, okay.
Okay. So we decided that we better do that.
Yeah, that's
So we
great.
started going up there. So even after we'd done 2 full shows, we'd go upstairs and sing for 3 hours,
Wow.
And I mean, it was weird.
Wow. Incredible. So then tell me how the Imperials kind of, you started your own, that next path to where you would go. Because I know, later on then Terry and Sherman would show up. I know that's a little bit later.
Yes.
But that was...
Well, Terry was with us with Elvis.
Okay.
It was Terry, and originally it was Roger Wiles.
Okay.
And then Roger left. Joe Mascao was there, and then we became Armin, Joe, Terry, and myself.
Okay.
So we were just we were going through changes, and some of that, it's really weird, but some of that I can't remember how it happened.
Yeah.
You just
I'm the same way.
it's there was so much
Yeah.
going on because you're doing records, you're in the studios, you're touring, you're doing this other thing, and then it's like it all runs together. So I couldn't tell you a lot of the exact things that went on, but I know that they did.
Yeah.
And then of course, Terry he just brought that solid lead singer to the group.
Yeah.
And Terry's a wonderful vocal arranger. He did some really good arrangements. So most of the stuff that you hear on those earlier Imperial albums were Terry Blackwood arrangements.
Wow.
And then, of course, we worked with Omardian. And wow. He actually traveled with us for a short time, and he played keyboards for us.
Oh, wow.
But he was so ahead of us, we couldn't sing what he was doing. I mean, seriously, he wanted us, and I mean, he was so far ahead musically from where we were vocally and understanding vocally what we ought to do there. So that's when he really did his stuff in Hollywood.
Well, that change from Heed the Call to One More Song for You is such a massive leap, sound-wise, song-wise. Of course, he and Stormy writing so much of that.
Yeah.
Whereas I go back and listen to Heed the Call. I love that record. I'll go back and listen to...
the gospel influence, the Southern gospel influence is there.
It's still there, yeah.
We
absolutely. Even, going back to Sail On, Watergrave was...
Oh.
Oof, you talk
Boy,
about...
that thing was...
I know you made a lot of churches mad with that one.
But, we did.
But as a kid, I'm like, wow, now that's music. That's helping me build
That's probably
the bridge.
the song that pushed us over.
Yeah.
And we didn't understand that. We didn't understand contemporary Christian music. We didn't know what that was.
Yeah.
Except all of a sudden, we were working. I'll tell you where it happened for us. We were working with Jimmy Dean, and we worked with him at the Fairmont Hotel in Dallas, Texas. It's where I was driving the bus and got it stuck in the middle of the street.
Oh no!
Yeah, at 2:00 in the morning, the bus was. It was one of those big scenic cruisers,
Yeah.
And it had this big long back end on it.
Yeah.
And Dallas, all the streets have those big dips for the water to run off.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I hit that.
No, you're okay.
And I pulled it over there and I got it stuck.
Oh no!
And I blocked 2 lanes of traffic in front of the Fairmont Hotel.
How'd you get it unstuck?
We had to have a truck that was almost as big as the bus.
Yeah.
I mean, they sent a little one. And it like the front end of the truck went up when they were trying to pick the back of the bus up. It was doing that thing. I'm sorry.
Okay.
But we brought this big crane. I mean, it was a truck with a big crane.
Man.
It was just really embarrassing.
What a scene.
But on top of that, we looked out of our window, and in the field over behind us was a Jesus festival. It's 72 or something like that. I forget when the big Jesus festival in Dallas.
Uh-huh.
Was right behind us, and we were hearing this music in these groups. Like, whoa! It was all of a sudden we realized that's where the music is going right there. That's the future.
Yeah.
And I don't even think we understood it, if we played any part in it or not. We just did what we did.
Yeah.
And so,
well, that's what I was going to ask. Did you guys make a conscious effort to go, we're changing directions?
No.
It was all the label that was
the
wanting to do
men
that.
and the.
But you were on you're on board with it. Like when they suggested we're going to bring in Omar,
right?
We're going to go this direction. You're like,
and
yes,
we
that's
didn't.
Exactly what
I guess I was just naive, but I didn't really know what he had done. But then he did a lot of stuff after us, big stuff.
Oh yeah.
And so, well, wow, he was here. Yeah. It was like we're part of that too.
Yeah.
But we didn't know that. We didn't understand it. And to say I think we were just doing, like we said, what came next. And the people that were kind of guiding us, the people at Word were guiding us. And, I never planned to do Sail On with a cowbell and that whole, it evolved. It's weird how it happens.
Yeah.
And now people say, hey, you're the guy with the cowbell,
Yeah.
right?
You never know.
This is what I'm remembered for.
You never know. You never know what people will remember.
No,
that's why you try to make the best choices possible along the way.
That's exactly right.
Good or bad, they're going to remember certain things. Yeah. I again go back to kind of where I started, picking up that Priority record, and then going back to One More Song for You. There was obviously musically is incredible, and no one could do what Omar was doing.
No. And
it's in my opinion, maybe one of the greatest musicians to ever grace the planet. I just think the world of him. He's a very dear friend of mine, and
yes.
I love him so much. But what you guys are able to bring with that, I'm not going to say the quartet sound, but it was a quartet. I mean, you guys still sang like a quartet with
right.
3-part harmony, with different voices kind of riding on top, but to fit that into now what is a little more forward-thinking pop music
right.
was such a breath of fresh air that it completely changed Christian music from that point on. I believe there are several cataclysmic events in the history of Christian music. To me, that's one of them. One More Song for You is one of them, especially Trumpet of Jesus. It just took it up another notch.
That was fun music.
Yeah. Tell me what it was like in the studio, because, one of the things, you said you listened to Omar's podcast that he did with me.
Yeah.
That he was trying to get you to sing some things and go in a certain direction. You're just like, I'm just not getting it. I don't understand
that. Well, more than anything, I think he was. It wasn't so much that. It might have been the fact that we didn't fit him.
Yeah.
And he didn't really fit us.
Yeah.
He already knew. He had this going.
Yeah.
See, and we were just a bus stop. You know,
those are
we
my
came
memories
through.
of Omar. Yeah, we'd sit down to plan out a record. And I'm like, we're going to be here all day going through arrangement. He goes, no, I already got it.
He's got it.
I already know.
He's got it in his head, and we'd never really got it in our head.
Yeah.
So it was time for him to blossom, and he did.
Yeah.
I mean, man, you'd say, wow, he's the guy that was. That's why we couldn't go there, because we hadn't learned that yet.
Yeah.
We had not progressed enough musically yet. So he brought us along, but he was already gone. And I mean, what an incredible creative mind. I mean, it's a certain person that has that.
Yeah.
God-given talent.
He's one in a billion, for sure.
Oh my gosh.
But then how did you, it's one thing to make the record
Yeah.
that's out of your comfort zone and doing things you've never done before. You got to take that stuff out on the road.
Yeah.
And how do you translate that
live
live
on
and make it
stage.
you,
Yeah.
and not just somebody's idea of what they want you to sound like? What was that like?
Well, you remember in the old days we did what we called head arrangements.
Right.
You know, you knew
Head
the
charts,
song and you do a head chart. But then when you started working with somebody like Michael, you couldn't do that. I mean, it had to be this way.
Yeah.
Because, see, you worked with a studio band, first of all, and our band on the road, they were capable. But for some reason, maybe just on the live stuff, they were there. But I never could understand why the companies wouldn't bring our band in to do our music. And I guess because it would have took longer for them to maybe pick up on it.
Yeah.
And maybe it wasn't going to be as creative. They had reasons. So when you got on the road, they had to try to recreate this sound from the album. And a lot of times it felt empty because it didn't have as many instruments.
Yeah.
And that was when we started doing things like each of us had our own mic. You know, Bob McKenzie was at Heartwarming or Impact. He's the one that kind of led us down that road, where we'd all have our own mics, and we all came from different parts of the auditorium using the wireless mics. I mean, people
Which
were
was
like,
mind-blowing at the time. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Or 4 microphones? Are you kidding me? Boy, this is nightclub. That's what this is. You know, these guys are
Well,
really...
there's a lot of that going on
Oh, yeah.
in that era of Christian music, like drums in the
Oh,
church.
yeah,
and
drums in the church.
This is a little too loud, and I can't believe you're saying that.
Yeah,
in,
right.
in our church.
Well, that's kind of where we were at. So to take what we were doing on the record to the stage, it was difficult.
Yeah. But here I'm going to interject here though. But I think that's what made you the perfect group to help this transition in Christian music, because you're already so well respected as a vocal group in Southern gospel and I'm not guess Southern gospel in your roots,
Right.
or just what you were already involved in that was well respected by the church, and then to make such a big change sonically and with production and performance, I think from anybody else would have taken a lot longer for the church to get used to. And I, for one, as I look back, I'm glad it was you guys, because I think God knew what he was doing by saying, I want music to go here now.
Right.
And you guys, I think you guys are the perfect artists to do that, because you had some cash to spend,
It was the predecessor of of worship. Well, the worship music that kind of came after that.
Yeah.
And then it's like it splintered off. There was rock.
Yep.
There was really raw, heavy metal rock, and I mean it was so weird to see it happen. Looking back at the Dove Awards, when there was only this category and this category, all of a sudden there's 5 categories. It just grew to embrace all of these new kinds of music that the church was being exposed to.
Yeah.
And the record that was called The Lost Album, that they never put it out. It was produced by Gary Paxton, and I mean Gary was creative.
Yeah.
But Gary was a little wild too. He was a little off the planet. but what he did, there were two songs on there, "Earth Our Island Home," which because Four Freshmen was my group, the Four Freshmen. When we got to slur out and do all of that stuff, man, that was heaven for us. It just because it was so much fun to sing. And then we found out later it was not going to be released. And I don't know how many years it took for him to find it. It was under, I think it was one one of the, I'm trying to think whose name it was.
I-
Neil Joseph.
Neil Joseph, yeah.
Under his desk, it was this box, 2 boxes, and it was this album, the Lost album.
Incredible.
I think he blocked his door open with it, during the day. What I'm just saying is they didn't release the thing, and we ended up doing. I think it was Ceylon maybe that we did, which did win a Grammy. It was weird, and that thing just kind of disappeared. But that music was really a turning point for us.
Yeah.
And I guess the higher ups said, no, we don't want them to change that quick.
Yeah.
We're going to go a little farther.
But you already
amazing.
did, though. You'd already made that impact.
Right.
And we were listening. My generation was listening, going, oh, okay, now I want to be involved in church music. Because I grew up in a little Southern Baptist church in Waco, and at 15, I was leading the hymn service for 30 people in our church. And I would have pastors or deacons come up to me and just lay their hand on me and go, young man, this is what you're going to do for a living. You're going to be a minister of music. And I'd be like, oh, no. I want to be the Imperials. I want to be in the Imperials. I want to be, the things I'm hearing on pop radio, I want to be Phil Collins, or I want to be Sting, or I want to be, But then when I could hear that in Christian music and go, oh, wait, there is a path here to where I can sing about the Lord.
See, and when you say it like that, it makes so much sense because you lived it. I mean, you were there. We didn't realize that was happening.
Well, no, again, we go back to what we said earlier, is you're just doing the next thing. And whatever you feel like the next best thing is and where the Lord leads you to go. Yeah. It shows you we're really not in control.
No.
We're really not. We're just following the path that God's laying out for us. Right. And hoping we make the best decisions.
Make the right choices.
Right. And then God's like, yeah, I can do anything with anything.
Why are you fighting me on this?
Yeah. And guess what? If you're not going to do it, they'll do it.
They'll do it.
I'll give it to them and they'll do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And then, of course, what we hadn't really talked about is the ministry aspect of this, of all of this music.
Yeah.
We finally came. We started, and just to highlight a little bit further on the changes, we started bringing, we brought background strings on tape, and it was synced up. Tom Reeves, TR.
Yeah.
He was the drummer. He wore headphones. The beat and everything they get for or whatever it was.
What was he running
was
it
synced
on?
up.
Was it reel to reel?
I believe it was.
Oh wow!
Reel to reel.
You guys were trailblazers.
And that was being synced. So we knew the place to come in. We're getting it through the monitors.
Yeah.
So we had strings or some other instrument that nobody played.
Second keyboard.
Another keyboard, right? And we started doing that. And it filled up the room, because more than 5 pieces could do.
Yeah.
And that was a change. That was a big change. The only thing is you're captured. At that point, there's no freedom to sing that chorus again, boy. No, but we found out you could do that.
Yeah.
but it was later. And talking about being in the studios back when they spliced the tape together, with the razor blade and all that. I mean, that's where we were. And then all of a sudden, we worked with, I think, Bob McKenzie. We were still with Benson. It had transpired to the place where you could punch in, and he said, "We're gonna do 3 passes, and we're going to throw the first 2 out." And we would say, "What?" But I mean, that's the kind of thing you did because you didn't want it to sound like you overdubbed.
Did you always sing together in the studio, even like later on? Was it something where the 4 of you would get in around a microphone and sing, or were? Because I know For Him did that. We did that a lot, and we did that in Truth. That was how you learned how to blend.
That's right.
And hear each other and come up with different harmonies.
Exactly.
And really start to create a cohesive sound. And it was different after we started going to more isolated single microphones in the studio.
Right.
And people just didn't do that much in the 90s or later on.
Right.
And I think it's a little bit of a lost art. It really taught you how to blend and match
exactly.
each other. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, later on, I think you'd go into the booth to punch in. Maybe your solo was you wanted to do that part, or you could punch in just your track.
Yeah.
I mean, it got to be so so individualized. You could do what you needed to do,
Yeah.
and that was, save money, save studio time. So they found shortcuts and ways to do that, but to still have the quality that they have. But to be in the middle of that change and that kind of a change, and you look back and say, wow, what you have now, the digital thing is just incredible.
Yeah. Oh, and I think the heart's gone out of a lot of it.
Well,
and the
I
hard
believe
work's
so.
gone out, and you can feel it.
So.
I had John Michael Talbot on a few episodes back, and we got to talking about waveforms and wavelengths and how music is a wavelength, and when you straighten it out or you perfect it, that it actually has a negative impact on the emotions and actually your body. Like your body doesn't react to a perfected sound wave. It's the imperfections in it that there's a minutia of that your senses pick up on, and you connect to it on a deeper level.
It's feeling.
Yeah.
You're feeling the feeling.
Yeah.
And I think when you run it through an auto tuner, the feeling is gone.
It's gone, yeah.
Because there's no note that isn't perfect.
Yeah.
And it's antiseptic.
Yeah.
It just has no feeling.
Yeah.
And that's
Can I go here with you here just for a second?
Sure.
So I had Russ on.
Oh,
and
my buddy.
Russ was, we talked about his exit, and Russ even toured with us before
did he
him
really?
back in the early 2000s, and just a joy to get to know him and be his friend over the years.
Great guy.
But he told us about a little bit how rough it was there towards the end of his run with you guys, and one of the things that's always stuck with me, and I share this with worship pastors across the country because I do a lot of consulting and coaching with worship pastors, and I tell them, don't ever leave angry. Don't ever, if you're going to leave a church, you're going to leave a position, don't leave with unresolved issues. Yeah. Don't leave angry. Don't leave blaming other people for the situation that you feel like you found yourself in.
Yes.
Get some forgiveness, figure it out. And I always go to that story that Russ would tell about how there was this really beautiful healing time of forgiveness and coming together right at the end of his time with you guys. Can I ask you about that and maybe just get your side of that? Because I know there's two sides to every story, and the personalities and the relationships are different on each side of that.
Yeah.
But it's a story that's always affected me, and that I've carried with me ever since I heard Russ tell that.
Russ was just a rare vocal talent that you just don't hear. I mean, he just had so much heart, and there was this ruggedness in his voice. And I just saw Russ and Tori. We just saw Russ and Tori a few weeks ago at Bell Buckle.
Yeah.
And we had a great time with him. Went to the house. And, I mean, he's just such a neat guy coming out of what he went through.
Yeah.
And, I don't think Armin and I even knew how much he had been through. And he would share that with us.
And going through.
Yeah. And I don't think we realized it. At least I didn't. And he kind of hid that very well.
Yeah.
But it was just, it's hard to understand our feelings, I guess, my feelings at that, going through those times when we made changes. It's like, here's this guy that's got this incredible voice, and we're forcing him to be kind of confined to the four of us to do within this little box.
Yeah.
And he's got so much. He can't contain it. He's got to go out on his own. And we just knew he was going to go. We didn't realize all of the stuff he was dealing with. At least I didn't. And so we never had hard feelings at all. I mean, it was just, he was just going to go leave and do his thing.
Yeah.
And I think that he had to escape and to find more of himself, because we were kind of keeping him in a little box, And I think it was good for us because we needed to realize, we found a jewel.
Yeah.
Not the
and
world needs
the
world needs this guy.
Right. Yeah.
They need to hear him.
Yeah.
And every time we had a change, there was somebody that the Lord sent for us. the right person. He was the right person for the time.
Yeah.
When Sherman came along, Sherman was the right guy for the time.
Yeah.
And we got feedback. We got all kinds of, people say things, but he was a great guy to work. He could sing. I mean, he could just sing it from heaven.
Yeah.
And it was fun to be in that group.
Yeah.
So
And I understand group dynamics, obviously, with
Sure.
4Him. And, we wanted to be you guys. In fact, I'll post this picture when we run this interview. We finally met the four of you together at the GMA. Remember the gospel music or CCM?
United.
Thing.
CCM
United.
Right,
And we
right.
shared a dressing room. And I stole that sign off of the
really?
dressing room door. It's still in my office. That says the Imperials in 4Him.
Okay.
And I'm like, that is full circle for me
that's wild.
in life. And it was just such a joy to just spend a few moments with the four of you guys together from that era.
That was nice.
But I understand group dynamics. I understand, everybody's kind of, it's no one's marching in a straight line. It's
Right.
impossible.
Right.
It's more like the blob.
Right.
And the blob's going the same direction, but it's all kind of moving. All the
Yeah.
parts are moving at different speeds.
That's
with
right.
different, different sizes and all that kind of stuff. And we went through that in different ways of just like, somebody's not super happy with their role here, or somebody's not getting to sing the song here, or, somebody's being pushed here,
Right.
and maybe someone is, getting some favor over here that the rest of us aren't. And,
Yes.
And so with the talent that the four of you had together and the years you had together, it still amazes me that you guys survived that era because it was such a drastic change in music, and I'm sure it was a drastic change in your audience
Yes.
and what you were asked to do, and just kind of how you were perceived in the industry. All that's a weight that's a new weight to carry.
Yes, definitely.
And it's going to affect everyone differently. And so to see you guys come out of that era and still be able to make great music, to me, is just such a testimony. And then, again, to do it the right way and still all be friends.
Right.
This many years later, I think,
Well, we
it's such a
had
testament to that.
we had some really good people that helped us. Record company that really cared about us and helped us, and the right.
Which you can't take that for granted.
Not always.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the bottom line.
Yeah.
It always comes into play somewhere.
If you're not selling,
No.
bye-bye.
Yeah, and that's sad, but I mean it's a fact of life. You've got to make. You've got to pay for what you've done.
Yeah.
And when budgets, were really important.
Yeah.
You'd say, we got $100,000. Are you serious? $100,000? Well, we can make more than one album. No, you can't.
No, you can't.
And we'd laugh and say, are you serious? I mean, the things that you can do, if you've got the money to do it.
Yeah.
We were doing, I forgot what album it was. It was Bill Sinead was. No, I'm sorry, that was Bill Sinead. But anyway, we're on the West Coast, and they said we're gonna. It was with Word, so we're gonna go to Santa Barbara, and go up there for a couple of days. Okay, so I mean Santa Barbara, that's a little pricey. Yeah, pricey up there. And you don't realize these guys are picking up the tab,
Yeah.
And you don't. It's just it feels weird because we wouldn't go there.
Yeah.
We wouldn't take the bus and hop in the bus and go up to Santa Barbara.
That's
right. It was expensive.
That's right.
And all of a sudden you found yourself, I'll fly in and do my part. Wait a minute.
Oh, I remember the days when we would do shows in New York City,
Oh.
and we would stay across the river in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Like we'd stay in Elizabeth.
Yeah.
And, because it was way cheaper than staying in the city. Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
So yeah. Oh, and it's really weird when you look at the places you've been, and the people you've worked with, and the things that you've seen. When we got married, one of our first trips was the Grand Canyon. And you say, what? You mean you never been to the Grand Canyon? I've been by it 100 times.
Yep.
But I've never been to it.
So I don't know if you've seen Celine Dion's documentary.
Yes.
she said this, and my wife and I looked at each other and went, "That's a perfect way to say it." She said, "I've been everywhere and I've seen nothing."
Exactly. I remember when she said that, because I said the same thing.
Yeah.
Boy, I know how that feels.
Yeah, I've been to every state. I'm sure you have too. I've sung in every state in the country.
Yep.
And I want to go back and actually visit all of those places.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I remember coming when we were on the trip, and we were in the motorhome, and we had parked in Camp Verde, and then we drove up in the Jeep, and coming around that corner, whew, and looking out the left side, woo, son, was the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
Took my breath away. I mean, literally, I had to cry.
Wow.
I couldn't help it. It was so beautiful.
Wow.
And I thought, all my life I've gone by this place and never stopped to see it.
Or flown over it.
Or flown over it, yeah. See, I just hole in the ground, you know.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. But then that's a sweet gift from God.
Yeah.
To allow you to have that after you've done all the work. It's kind of almost like, in a way, you're the last one to eat. You know?
Yeah, that's right. You're right.
With some of these experiences,
Yeah.
it is, you know, and people want our life. But musicians that I'm around all the time, they want to do what I did. I'm like, I don't know if you do. I don't know if you would get into it if you really saw what it was. I mean, it's great. I wouldn't trade it for anything. But you have to be built the right way and have the right demeanor. And, you know, I want to know about your exit from the Imperials. When did you make that decision and why?
You know, I there were so many contributing factors to it. I guess because we had done so much. I'd been there 20 years. We'd seen it, about everything, and worked with everybody you could think of, just about, you know, been in the studios and worked with all these artists and been overseas. I mean, it's like you've come to the end of your want to.
Huh.
And
Oh, wow.
and you just say, you know, I'm really tired. But I love to sing, but I'm not. I'm just tired.
Yeah.
And so Armin and I, we had our differences over the years. He was a great guy to work with, and we were good friends. But it was time for me to move on and do some other things. I wanted to do some solo stuff, and I don't know. It was just. I guess that's a time in your life when you're just looking back and saying, well, I don't have a lot of years left.
Yeah.
I mean, I left him in '86. So what is it? It's been a few years ago.
Yeah, it's 38. It's 38 years ago. Yeah.
I spent 11 years as a music director in Mount Juliet at Victory Baptist Church. 11 great years of my life. My wife and I traveled for about 12 years, and some of that with our family. And I mean, I got to see and do just about everything.
Yeah.
And you know, you just get tired. You want to go home and sit down and rest. Sit down and rest a little while.
Spend a little time with the kids and
right.
Yeah.
And grandbabies.
Yeah. I had that feeling in '99.
Okay.
The way I put it was, this is a have to, not a get to. And I feel like I don't get to do this anymore. I have to do it, and that's
exactly
when it just kind of the joy of it just started to kind of drain out of me.
That's when your want to leaves.
Yeah, and again, I just wanted to be home.
Right.
I wanted to be. I don't know about you. I didn't know what a weekend was. I worked on weekends.
That's right.
I can almost remember specifically, and it wasn't that long ago, maybe 2020 when COVID hit. And everything shut down, and I had left my job at my church I'd been at for 15 years. And so I went straight from touring in '87 with Truth.
Okay.
Started for him in '90, went all the way through to 2006, took a full-time worship pastor job, and then I'm working every weekend there. And I remember the first Saturday I had home, and I was like,
What do I do?
What do I do? You know, and like it's almost like I've seen the sunshine for the first time in decades, and I think that's something that's important for people who listen to this podcast who are fans of our music. Understand that we're not martyrs here. We're not waving a flag of poor us. We had a really hard time. We had a really beautiful life.
We did.
A lot of great experiences, but there is a trade-off.
Sure.
You know, where sometimes you just want to go home.
Yeah.
I remember being on the road. I remember being on the West Coast, living in the South, just going, I'm so far from my family right now.
Right.
I just want to go home.
Yeah.
I just want to go home. And they may be those were probably some of the most difficult times for us as a group when we had the most conflict was when all of us wanted to go home. But we had 2 more shows.
Yeah.
And you could feel it. And you could feel it. And so everything comes to an end.
Yeah.
But, I think, again, your run with the Imperials and I listened to Side by Side this morning.
Oh.
And just like, I remember that song. I remember that song. I remember that song. I know it wasn't one of your biggest albums, but I was just like, I'm so glad this is here. Isn't it a great thing to leave to your grandkids? Isn't it a great way to leave a legacy behind of this is who I was and what I believed? And a lot of people don't get that. I think we're really blessed in that way. As you look back on your history in Christian music, in gospel music, are there a couple of moments that just pop into your head? I mean, is there something that, or maybe there's, I know you've shared your story a million times and you've gone through those emotions just as many times. Is there one like thread you could pull from that to say, this is what this meant to me, or this is a song that just continues to come back into my life that I was a part of, that just continues to be a passenger on my journey?
Yeah. A moment, I think, probably was when we were in St. Louis. We used to sing at the Kingsland Theater with the Lester family. They would bring the Imperials in. And it was an old theater with a marquee out in front, and it was pretty cool to see your name and the lights and everything. And at the break, I had walked down and off the platform and was talking with some people and ended up in the back of the auditorium. And there was the Lesters were going to go on before we went on again for the second half. And there was a young guy back there that was just kind of standing off to himself. And me, I just don't never meet a stranger, Hey, brother, good to see you. Hope you're enjoying the concert kind of thing, And he was looking at me. And he was crying. And so I said, well, buddy, what's happening? And he said, well, I don't really have anything to live for. I'm sure glad I came here tonight.
Wow.
And so we started talking. And he said, my gun's in the car. But he said, I like what you guys do. I like the music. And he said, but I think I'm done. He said, I'm done living here. And we just talked, cried. I tried to tell him about Jesus. And the next time we were back in Kingsland Theater, he was there.
Oh, wow.
He said, I'm sure glad I talked to you that night. That's when I realized how powerful it is what we do. Powerful enough to change somebody's life. That's probably the thing that changed me the most. I started taking what I do seriously. Not just fun, but it was serious. Serious fun.
Yeah, I love that.
And it was the way the Lord was leading me to. I had been in church all my life, but I could never say when I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that I'd been saved. I'd been baptized when I was 13 years old.
Yeah.
My whole story. I didn't get saved till I was 32.
Wow.
30. In 1982.
Wow.
That's when I got saved. But it was at a solo concert that I was doing.
Yeah.
So it was pretty awesome. But that's probably the thing that in my whole career that I'll never forget. Is that what we do is life changing. And we got to treat it that way.